Today, a guy was brought in. And he had no time to do that.
So it's
You know,
done.
and about if I know that all that. She must know the world. But imagine how this kid got here.
But
Look
she,
at this.
but he was saying he got a dime back.
No, he didn't.
Yeah. That was his second.
If she did it, I thought she had to take it.
I just was shocked today when it came over.
I knew it was coming. I just
Did you
didn't
know it was coming? Because it was sure under wraps, they didn't say much.
It's always fun when those stories are done.
Okay, we're live streaming, 6 o'clock. Ready for our work session here. We have 5 items on the agenda, and we're gonna see if we have time to squeeze one more in there that I think all council will agree that we need to get one of them. So we're gonna start with the recycling center lease agreement. Actually, probably we need to wait for Becky on that, really.
She just walked in.
She just walked in.
Yeah, I see her.
James, you wanna start on that?
You know, I didn't really read through it super close, it was first drafted. But it is a lease agreement with the recycling group for the premise. It's a 2-year lease. I was just kind of trying to clarify insurance. They have their own insurance. We have insurance for the building. They have to indemnify us. And part of the reason that discussion came up is Jim and I were looking at it. Jim had concerns about the damage or destruction section. In the event of damage or destruction of any part of the lease premise, lessor should have the option of terminating this lease within 60 days. Now, normally when we do any kind of lease involving a property, we would require that property to be in a similar condition to what we leased it out as. So that language is a little bit concerning. And Catherine's here, and she worked on this, so she can speak to it a lot more.
I guess in terms of that damage or destruction part, I just worked off of the Silver Strike lease, and I know that maybe isn't the city's favorite lease. But so that's pulled from the verbiage that they have in there.
Can you tell us where that is on, like what page?
Page 3. X. Whatever number that is in the manual.
10,
10?
like an iPhone.
Okay.
Just put it in terms that work for you.
And then I have another thing on that, on the services on page 2, we talked about whether the city, you know, we don't wanna get in competition with people in business, but there's people that do the mowing business in town, would do a lot. Be a lot better to do a contract with them about mowing that than for us to go put that in our mowing situation. So I'd rather see them get a contract with, you know, one of the other Procut or Baldwin or somebody who does that professionally around town. I don't like to put ourselves in competition with anyone in business.
Could they just take care of that themselves, if they just
Well,
move
they
it?
could do their own, yeah, you know, as far as
Except
taking
for
care
the
of
parking lot
the
grading.
road and that, no, we'll
Wouldn't we
take care
just
of.
do that anyway?
We'll take care of the road and that, you know, putting the gravel in and stuff. That's just basic, but as far as doing the mowing, I'd rather see them do it themselves.
So they are responsible for it. That doesn't mean they have to hire it out to us. They could do it themselves. They could find whoever they wanted to.
There's not a whole lot around the building.
Yeah, I think that was something that Gina Berghoff threw in there, toward the end, just because it is such a small little plot. And like the city went and mowed it the other day for us just to be nice, and so she was like, I wonder if they could just do this, you know, twice a year, it's $500. But, what do you think? I'm sure we could hire it out.
You know, my chief concern is that, it hasn't been done until like last week. And I think we'll probably be held to a different standard. You know, I mean, every once in a while I read about people who don't mow their lawns, and, I just prefer the burden to be on the authority that's gonna issue the ticket rather than on the board that, I mean, we do a lot of things things. We're really all the same organization. I mean, it's a city service, you know, I think it's a very small fund. But for us to hire that out, you know.
Well, you're hiring the city to do it for $500, I'm sure you can get it done for less.
Well,
And we don't-
500 would cover the, grading.
The grading
If-
stuff,
if-
that will just be part of it, we'll just do
Okay.
that. But as far as the mowing, I'd rather you have someone that's in the business do that.
Yeah.
We got down there just under the circumstance, but it'd really be better if you're in the deal that you take care of that. But as far as taking care of the grounds, we will keep the driveway and the road in drivable condition.
That's fine. I think Gina did feel strongly about wanting to be fair and, you know, pay our responsible part, and that's, but it's fine with us if we just cross that out.
Yeah, we can do that, so
And
we'll
then the
just,
city will do the grading for, we're not gonna charge, right?
Yeah,
Correct?
no, we'll just keep the road in condition.
okay,
How about plowing? Will the city plow it?
no, we're gonna hire out
They've
plowing.
got that same outfit that plows the other, probably do the same. We've always been at them to do that anyway, it's such a, for the days they're open for us to get down there in a timely fashion with all the plowing we're doing. They have someone who does the plowing around the other part of the,
Industry.
industry, and they could back in there and do that so much quicker in a timely
And
fashion.
so we probably wanna put that in here, that they're gonna be responsible for the plowing.
So what, I've got that the leasing is gonna be responsible for mowing and plowing, and what is it you said we were doing? Cause I was hearing,
For
We're gonna take
grading.
care of the grading and the ground part of it.
the ground.
Yeah, the road.
Our
and-
drainable
road and
Cross
surface.
asphalt.
pavement.
It gets quite worn through the year,
Yeah.
and then we go in and put
Okay.
gravel and smooth it up.
Grading and road fill-ish.
Well, I can change that to reflect those changes.
Catherine, on page 3 under default, the last line of A, I think that should be AC, make here the default, not base or. Thank you.
Mayor, I had a question about number 10 when we talk about repairs, and it kind of ties into James' comment about they're responsible for maintaining the residences where they are. Number 10 says that we'll be responsible for any major repairs over $1,000, which, to me, there's, what are the limits and what about whose fault? Because there's another section in there that we talk about, they can make major, they can do major changes and stuff that has to be cleared by the city. But what do we anticipate the repairs would be, and what would be the source of the need for them? And what sort of constraints can we put on that so that we're not just signing a blank check?
Page 10.
It's on page 2, number 9. I'm sorry, number 6.
Number 6.
Sorry, I was looking at my Roman numerals upside down. When did we switch to Roman numerals? This is not a standard format I'm used to seeing.
I don't know why, I mean, if there's repairs, that means there's damage, that's what I don't understand.
Or is it a maintenance thing? Piece of equipment breaks down.
When we were down there, we were looking at it like the garage door. There's not a lot in there. I mean, it's a building that's been insulated, metal building. It's a big garage door, and they're making a little break room out of one of the storage areas.
So somebody closes the garage door someday with the trucking side and it derails and has to be worked on and put back on, is that the city's responsibility?
Whoever closed the garage door, I don't know if it was the worker there or.
I would say that too, but that's not what this says.
I might be able to add some clarification to that. First of all, if there's an event like that, then all this insurance should cover it. But second of all, I think it's in the city's best interest and our best interest to keep the building in good condition. And rather than have it be, I think it should be to the city standard. I don't, like if the roof starts leaking, or something like that, I don't expect there to be any problems, but maybe the city would have a higher standard of care than a tenant.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
I guess the maintenance is one thing, but repairs, the word repairs in there makes me think that somebody did something, damaged something, that we're gonna go in and repair their damage. I guess that's the insurance part covers it too.
So does the city insure the building and then the, recycling group insures the equipment? Is that what, because they have to have $1 million of insurance? And a
And
certificate?
liability. You have $1 million liability, I don't know what that covers as far as.
I mean, I'm thinking of like renter's insurance. You know, that just covers the contents. And the owner has to insure the building.
And I'm wondering if,
So like a roof, probably would be the city.
and so what I'm wondering is if instead of repairs, Jim, if it would be better if it just said something along, the city will be responsible for reasonable maintenance of the structure. And then reasonable kind of encompasses not the stuff that's not reasonable, you know, it kind of rules out the unreasonable stuff, which, to your point, would maybe come under insurance and other things, but.
But we also have to think what's reasonable to you may not be reasonable to me. Reasonable is kind of a iffy word.
It is, but the reasonable person standard is really huge in the legal world too, so we're not inventing it, it's vague, but I think it would cover us of, you drove a truck through the side of the building, which is the sort of thing that I'm.
Yeah, we wanna make sure that.
Because right now, it just says, we'll do anything that costs more than $1,000, no matter how much and how many of them there are, we'll do it, and that scares.
I don't think we can envision every horrible thing that's gonna happen, and I don't think anything's gonna happen. And we sure work with the city, the insurance, all the insurance that we've all got better cover everything.
Well, that's true, and the insurance companies will duke it out. I mean, really, it's not gonna, if we have insurance on the building and they have insurance on the property,
I think I heard Jim say that an open checkbook repairs causes concern, but no concern with saying the city will be responsible for reasonable maintenance of the structure.
I think that'd be a better wording.
We're good with that.
Yeah. That covers like our intent, we just wanted to make sure that like your role as the landlord is covered in anything major that happens to the building that is like, like hail damage or some crazy stuff like that. So I think that works for us.
I got another thing. Contractors, do you have an agreement with Fairchild Industries that you can use the restroom? Because there's no running water down there, and I think that you're required to have a porta potty or access to a bathroom.
They all work there, so.
You better get it in writing. We had to have it in writing years ago when I worked there, and we had an agreement with the city.
About a bathroom?
Yes, that the workers on Saturdays could access the building to use the restroom.
The Fairtooth Industries employees
Correct.
could
So
use the
just,
Fairtooth
a note
Industries
from Ed
bathroom.
that says, yes, they can
Okay.
be between the Wednesdays and Saturdays, but you should, because the law has changed for contractors that are working off, on somebody else's property. They have to have a porta potty. You ever see those porta potties all over where they're building new houses? They have to have access to a bathroom.
I think we can do that
Yeah.
to make sure our bases are covered, yeah.
I had one last question on page 4. It's 11B. So this is under this section about default, and I will add just an editorial comment. To me, the order, aside from the Roman numerals change, the order of this was really kind of confusing, because there was things like default, which to me seemed like it should maybe be further down, and generally attorney's fees and that stuff comes at the end, and insurance would come before default. But so to your point, it sounds like it was maybe pulled from 2 or 3 different things and kind of stuck together.
If you wanna email me like, the list of the way that you'd like to see it, if that makes most sense, I can change it up.
I would default to the city attorney on that, but I think there's kind of just a traditional way that you could do the order. But I did have a question on what the intent of it was. It comes under default, and so it says, hey, they gotta pay, and if they fail to do this, and then they fail to do some stuff, which is talked about later, the insurance, that's kind of why I mentioned that. And the B just says, lessor may release the leased premises and add all reasonable default costs and expenses to, is that, what is the intent of that? Is that to them again, or if that says if they default, I think it's one of those things that ultimately is never gonna come into play, but I didn't get what the purpose of the clause was. Is it saying if they don't pay the rent, we have the right to lease it to somebody else? And if so, is that really needed? Does it say we have the right to lease it back to them? Is that really needed?
James, do you have one on there? This is just something
Is
that
that
I pulled
A?
in.
Are you looking at the
No,
last one?
I'm looking at D, so it's on page 4, it's the last numbered item under 11, but it's on page 4.
The top D.
No, I'm sorry, the top D, yeah, that's part of 11, not part of 12. Lessor may release the leased premises and all reasonable default costs and expenses to rent due under this lease.
I think it just means you can release it if we default on our rent, but if you think that's overkill in terms of explanation.
Or if they get caught up, that's how I read it, if they, okay, we'll pay, and then they pay.
Needs to stay.
I'll defer to the city attorney, I just,
She said it needs to stay.
pardon?
I think she said it needs to stay.
You know, I think
I
it's
put
just
that, I don't
standard.
know whose contract that came out of, but it needs to stay, because it basically says if they default, I'm sorry, I don't say default, they will, we can release it and they're still responsible for the damages. Under an ordinary situation, if somebody defaults on a lease, then if you re-rent it, you don't get to get what they've defaulted on back out of that person. So that is why that's in there. And I did the order, Dave. I'm not, the order of what's not important. I mean, there's no set order of where to put everything.
You just have one more little thing. It says it's for 2 years, but it only goes through 2020, so you might wanna change that to 2021.
See, I tried to count that on my hands and I just couldn't. Thumb down. Someone's gonna get it. Someone will know.
Hey, I have two things I'd like to add to that. The first one on page 2, under item 5, in the middle of the paragraph, it says including but not limited to dumping waste. And I'd like to just scratch that because I think all of our damages have been covered. But as we all know, there's a steady stream of people bringing things in on Saturday and Wednesday, and I just think it would be cleaner. You know, there's already plenty of language about environmental damage and other damages, and I don't think that, I mean, if dumping waste, I don't think it's clear. I just think that should be removed. And then the second thing is, under services on item 8, rather than lessee agrees to cooperate with lessor, I would prefer to say lessee and lessor agree to mutually cooperate. Just 'cause.
And I think that section is gonna be, as I understood the earlier conversation, is gonna be completely rewritten. It says, leasing is responsible for mowing and plowing, lessor is responsible for grading and maintaining the surface of the road. So then it's 2 separate things.
Yeah, okay. If you don't have an objection, then we'll, if that is something to incorporate. I think it's nice to have mutual. Mutual cooperation.
Help me understand, so I read the paragraph, the second paragraph up under 5, and I think I get why they would say, hey, you guys are there, and you're talking about people coming in and dropping stuff that they ought not to drop or something. And what to me, this says is, you'll do your darndest and your part to make sure that they don't drop things that they ought not to be, and specifically things that cause environmental damage. And you're saying, hey, we don't want that responsibility.
No, we're completely responsible. Everything up there is environmental waste, if you think about it.
Well, I mean, it's all waste.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the terminology isn't clear. We're not ever gonna let anybody husband and I just spent 3 days rehabbing the break room. I don't want the windows dirty. But, it's not clear, and it's just not a good sentence to have for a recycling facility. I mean, I would sure hope that nobody changes their oil up there, but if they do, it will be, someone else that isn't a part of us. I would hope there isn't any battery acid, I would hope there isn't any, things in plastic containers, and what would that be permitted? We certainly wouldn't permit it, but if it were to happen, is that permitting it? I mean, I just stumble on the language, and if it isn't clear, I don't think it's a good sentence.
Maybe it needs to say if someone does bring in a container with, oil, battery acid, or some other toxic waste, that it is the responsibility of the recycling center to make sure it's properly disposed of.
And we already have language about unsanitary conditions and impairing the value of the property, which I think covers those things.
Where's that?
Right above that sentence. Let's see.
Sanitary and environmental are two different things.
I'm also good with, leaving it. It comes to a point where it's splitting hairs, but I mean, the reality is, we're gonna do our very best. Fairtooth Industry has been doing their very best, and it is a recycling facility. So if you wanna raise the bar that high, I think, and not only that, I don't see it happening. If it does happen, it's something that we're gonna have to work with. It's not something we're gonna wanna argue about.
To your point, you always want to get that stuff done quickly too, because one person leaves a dead refrigerator or mattress and.
Exactly. If somebody changes their oil, our main goal is to get it cleaned up.
So Catherine, is it you who's kind of steering up this, or is it the city attorney directly that's working on kind of the suggestions and changes?
I'll probably make actual changes on the document and then give it to her.
For approval? As long as the two parties that we sign off, I'm good with that.
Everybody good? Okay, we'll move to council.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Barrett's contract, has been rewritten, and we've all had an opportunity to do that. When we discussed this last time, Diane wasn't here, but Mary had some concerns. Is there a conflict at all?
No, just,
You talked
At
about
this
her name
moment.
being on some documents that you received and Diane received. I just wanted to make sure that there is no conflict that you have.
not to my knowledge that it's still ongoing. I mean, is that,
I did receive, a settlement agreement for a lawsuit that didn't exist, that came through Diane Ferris's email. I have not heard anything for a few months. I'm assuming that's gone away. So there was a conflict.
or the appearance of one
The
anyway?
appearance of one, and if, you feel like I have a conflict, I will.
I just wanna make sure that it doesn't affect how you feel about this contract.
I was happy about the non-disclosure.
That's an addition, I was happy about this, I'm happy with the contract.
And I had a thought too, and despite best efforts, it felt like, and it seemed like last time that we were chatting, like that we were having a conversation about Diane Barris, which I think, at least for my part, was absolutely not the intent. So I too am happy with the contract and with the non-disclosure. I think that I will bring forward a separate ordinance that does not specify any one person or any one thing, but I think it is appropriate that we have something similar. We have things in our HR, so I don't know if it's an ordinance or resolution that basically just says if we have somebody who's working for the city and somebody who's also working for a another position, because quite frankly, people will have that opportunity, and there's all sorts of people that may have your job and a part-time job there. I think what we need is an ordinance that's not tied to any person or anything, that just says if there's a possibility of confusion to exist, it's incumbent on that person to make it very clear when they are working for the city or when they are not working for the city. And I think it should apply whether it's contractors or employees or anybody who has two jobs, which is just a reality of life. And I hope that would cover those concerns at the same time, not come across as, hey, we have a concern with person X, because that was never the concern from my understanding.
That was never my concern. The appearance of a concern.
And I think, like I said, it just, knowing one story that was kind of a first or second hand, however you want to look at it, just of the situation where there was some confusion that existed. If you take out all the names and all the players and just say there was a situation, it's like, yeah, we should probably make sure that doesn't happen again. But I don't think we should address it as part of this. I know we talked about it last time, and it's like, I don't think we should address it as part of this. I think it's just as good, just like we have a lot of things in the, employee handbook that says, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Just one more thing like that. And I think the possibility of having people that work for the city, whether it be employees or contractors, either one, exists.
Yeah, this came with a non-disclosure agreement, and it satisfies all of those concerns. So, I don't know why you would have to add something else, but.
No, I wouldn't. This to me was something, and part of my concern is, I felt like, and particularly as we read the introductory letter, it felt like somebody taking let me pick my words carefully. I would like it to be very, very clear to Diane when this is done that we are absolutely thrilled to have her here, that there's nobody who has any concerns about her and there's nobody who has any questions. Because the conversation from my position was not intended to be about her. And I think we need to undo that, because I think it was taken that way by some people.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are taken more personally than they are meant. And we can't clarify enough to people. I sat in a meeting yesterday where things were really misunderstood. And I don't know what we could have said to make it more clear that, the staff were not being attacked.
So the short version is, I'm happy with this, and I would like to send a very clear message to Diane that we're thrilled to have her on board as well. So I'm good.
Second.
Well, this is just, the straw man vote to say, does it come up at the next meeting?
I'm just agreeing with you.
The only thing that I had in here was that it's 14 months, which is great, but that doesn't coincide with our fiscal year. It says that it coincides with our fiscal year.
With the police budget, is what I read.
So the police budget is
Jason.
different than the
Do you want to
city's
I
budget?
think in address that, right now, she's without a contract, she actually doesn't have to show up. I'm thankful she's still showing up. She did, I think, express to me that she did feel that it was somewhat a personal attack on her. The fact we spent 45 minutes and her name was thrown around, the fact that people and her friends that watched it on live from Canada commented on it, and I don't know that I was
Well,
supposed to.
hopefully they'll watch tonight as well.
Well, I hope so too. I also want you to know that you were asking if there's a way out, how it wouldn't be smart to have a contract that we didn't have a way out. If you look at the last clause of her contract, she gives a 30-day notice to either party. The thing that she was really concerned about is the fact that there's a lot of projects that we have that take a lot of research that we have to do for like grants for VEST. We have obtained a grant for VEST, saving the city of Red Lodge $10,000. That's more than we're going to pay her over the course of this contract. $7,500 is what we're going to pay her over the course of this contract. She has already saved the city $10,000. What she was looking for is a 3-year contract. Like I said, she included in there that she can give a 30-day notice because she has no problem with the quality of her work, and she knows that her quality of work will not be the issue. What she was looking for, there's a lot of projects that I have that require a lot of research that are going to go out in long term, and she doesn't want to put all that long term in. If it's your contract, she doesn't get to finish the project. It's wasted work. And I think that's really what her desire was, is to obtain a 3-year contract so that we could do those projects and go that route. And by the way, she had another job offer after the meeting, so we need to quit discussing her. I'm gonna end up losing her. But, the deal is, she's a very good hand, very competent, and is a great asset to the city of Red Lodge and to my police, and to our police department.
Can you clarify, I understand that there's a minimum of 50 hours per month, but if she does 60 hours a month, do you pay her more? Because should you be, or?
She's very good about trying to just keep it right where it is. I know for a fact that she puts in more time and does not bill us. She, like I said, this is more, as she expressed in her letter, this is more about helping the police department and about doing something good. She loves what we're doing with the police department. She wants us to succeed. She wants us to provide better service for our citizens. And I think this is her way of giving back to the community. She's not getting paid even remotely what she's worth. And she knows that. And like I said, I think she addressed that in her letter. Are you taking advantage of her? Yes, but with her knowledge of that. Would I love to pay her more? Absolutely. Would I love to increase her hours? Absolutely. But again, the mayor and I sat down in our meeting about budgets, and as much as I wanted to, and my original budget had more in, it was one of the things that were cut. And unfortunately, it's one of the things that I would like to see grow, but again, we're trying to be very, very careful on how we spend the city's money and where we're at. And so, yeah, if you want to give me more money and put her to work for more hours, I'm absolutely in favor of that.
The only caveat is if we're gonna do, this is my experience as a contractor, if we're gonna do, this is what we would call a fixed fee engagement in my world. So we're paying her $700 a month, and so if we're not gonna pay her 60 hours if she does 60, then to me, if she does 30 hours one month, she still gets her $700. So that, we need to be clear on.
And I appreciate your opinion on that, and I will tell you right now, if we tell her that, you're still going to get probably 60 hours a month from her.
I suspect we probably will because of everything we've heard about her.
Yes, sir.
Is it correct to say that if she did start to work on one of these long-term grants and she decided to give her 30 days, her replacement would be able to step right in to where she left off and carry that torch forward?
There's a learning curve in the job and what she does. We're very fortunate that she has somewhat of a legal background as far as a paralegal, as far as understanding legal terminology. She understands very well and reading what's required for contracts. I will tell you right now, I doubt very much there's anyone that we could find that has her knowledge and experience and her professionalism for the amount of money that we want to pay for the little bit of hours that we get from her on a monthly basis. And so I think that if she were to go somewhere else, I don't know that we would ever obtain it. I would hope to find someone like that. But to step in and just take over those grants, there's a lot, like you said, there are years sometimes in the making. One of the things that I would like to see, my dream type project is I would really love to see a school resource officer in a school. There are grants that are out there that we have to research, and we're trying to do that without any cost to the city, but still providing a better service to our community. Getting a cop up there in the schools, once they get an officer in the schools, they won't want to let go of that officer. It's a completely different, it's a bridge between the school and the police department. It's a liaison officer, you might say. And so that is a dream that I want to do, because it's going to build those relationships with young kids and our police department, where we're going to have more contact. So by doing that, there's some research that has to be done and some data that has to be collected in order to obtain grants like that. And that is the stuff that I work on. But it, again, takes a lot of time, and we have a lot of projects that we're having to do already. And like for her, it was just the fact of having the 3-year contract to know that I can go ahead and work on it, I can invest that time in it, because at the end it's going to pay off for her. But to have someone, like you said, step in and do it, I really don't think that that's the case.
That answers my question.
When she's ready to work on that SRO, send her to my direction, because I do have the data, and I'll have some ideas on grants.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of community response on it. She's gone to some grant schools to better educate herself, to obtain additional grants that are there, like the VEST grants, where we can save the money, the $10,000. We're trying to be very, very proactive and use the funds that are available to obtain the grants. So a vest, a bulletproof vest for an officer is a perishable product. In 5 years, we have to provide a new vest. Those vests cost anywhere from $1,000 to $1,200. You can get some really cheap, really heavy ones for around $500, but I don't wanna wear it every day. And we wanna make sure that our officers are comfortable and wear it and protected. And so by doing that, they're a match grant. So if a vest costs $1,200, we pay $600, and we get a matching grant of $600 pays the other half. And so those are the kind of things that bring money back to us that you may not see. You may look at the budget and see that we're scheduling or proposing $7,500 from her, but really, we've gained that already in just what we're going to have to purchase, and it pays for her salary. So it's one of those things that you may not see on paper by just looking at it, but I do want you to understand she's a very valuable part. I would like to see a 3-year contract. She went with a 1-year contract because that was your desire, and like I said, she wants to continue to work. I think if you were open to that, now that she has the clause that you as a 30-day notice, either party, maybe you might reconsider and look at a 3-year contract so that she has the security and the knowledge to know that she can work on these projects and put the time and effort into it.
And I hope that she picked up from watching or was made aware that, again, the concern with the 3-year and the desire to drop that down was, again, not a Diane Barris conversation. It's something that we've faced as a council that has come up several times. As you're aware, we've seen contracts that came in with much longer terms, and it raises the hairs on necks.
So I understand, and I understand the fact that you're trying to be responsible to our public, and I appreciate that. I have no issue with that at all. I don't have a problem. The thing is that we do have other agents that we do use that are contracted employees, such as when we have a transcription. We call in for a search warrant for a blood draw on a DUI. Those have to be transcribed, and we actually use a company that transcribes it. We don't have a contract with them, but we do use them. And so I guess my direction in maybe looking future, where do we do this, and where do we draw the line as far as where I have to have contracts signed by the council? Because if we have this non-disclosure portion, it's not just for the police department, it's gonna have to be for every other agency, every contract that the city signs.
It should be.
So
Is that what
every
you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, kind of, so, and again, to the chief's point, I question, and I defer a little bit to a comment that Micah made the last time. And again, I've worked as a contractor for a significant part of my career, and I work with a lot of contractors even now, and you made a comment, my contract is only as good as yesterday's job performance. Even if this is a year, I look forward to signing it again in a year, but to your point, she's working without a contract now, and as long as it's in your budget, does she require a contract that requires council approval?
Necessary.
So I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a nice, but we don't want it to be a hindrance to that. And I think, to your point, we probably have a fairly standard length, whether it be 1 year or 2, that isn't just this, it's all of these sorts of things that come up for us. And a year seemed like everybody was comfortable with last year, and like I said, there's nothing that says we can't renew it 20 times.
Right.
Just bring it forward like in May. A couple months before it expires, so.
Well, but if I may address that, one of the problems is that every budget is different. And so we would be working off the previous budget, calling a contract a year out with not having the new budget in process. And I mean, I'm just bringing that up, that's for your guys' discussion, that's for you to decide, but just to let you know that if we did bring it up in May, it would be before the new budget was there, and you would be spending money on a budget that we don't know. Like I
But
said,
it still hasn't been approved. I mean, really, and we're on the new budget, and we just got it Friday, and
It would-
it hasn't.
It would
I
be
mean-
similar to you mentioned we need to replace, bulletproof vests every 5 years. You're adding those to your budget even before it's approved, because that's part of your anticipated operating expenses.
so that's in my budget, we don't spend that before it's in the budget. And I guess if you're signing a contract before the budget is up, you're spending that money from my previous budget. I'm fine with you. I mean, I want her to work.
I would guess that you bring that forward in May, and it would probably start July 1st. you know, so that we were discussing
Just
it.
bring it forward a
In the
couple months
future,
before
is what
it
they're saying.
expires.
Yeah.
You have the money to pay her until the new budget is approved?
I will find I will find $700.
They
Okay.
have
My
to,
budget.
because the city
It
has
doesn't
their
get
reserves.
I will pay the $5,000.
Because I think you're below budget this year, so that shouldn't be a problem.
$40,000, the budget's been, that's getting back.
Yeah, we're
budget.
July first now.
Yeah, we're past July. We're in the new budget cycle.
Working off of the old budget.
Right.
Hey, if you wanna give me that 40,000 back, I'll take it.
My only concern was the liability of the city, and the situation was unusual, and I'm happy to say I haven't heard.
There was also some other concerns which she addressed in her letter. She's been very, very professional, and like I said, any conversation that she puts out for the police department, it is on my letterhead, police department letterhead, and it is signed by administrative assistant at that time. She has a separate account, email account, where if anything is emailed or conversation, it is on the police department, and it does not say her name, it's the administrative assistant for the chief.
I think we need to be careful, because I don't want to repeat last week's conversation, because it went sideways. And like I said, I think the concern is not a Diane Barris concern, it's a, hey, we should look at how we address this in the future. So I don't want to do anything that reiterates making her feel like it's a Diane Barris concern. I have heard, so anyway, yeah, that's my concern.
Yeah, it looks good.
I think we move it forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your consideration on that.
And
Tell
make
her
sure she
thanks
gets the
from
warm
all of
fuzzy as
us,
well.
Chief.
Yeah.
I'm
Tell
sorry.
her thanks from all of us
I
that
will.
she's staying with us.
I will, thank you.
We have the Spires Development Update. This is just for information. And, James, you wanna help us with that?
Sure. Yeah, I got a few updates I wanted to get council up to speed on, some of which, let some other people know as well, so that council should be aware of what's going on too. First off, I just want to say there's developers at Spires. They are interested in doing something we have wanted to see for a long time, which they never wanted to do, which was to get rid of the zero lot line requirements, and that we don't have normal, about half the lots up there have abnormal lot line requirements that were approved as part of the subdivision, where houses can actually be on the property line. There's no easements recorded to provide maintenance on houses, and so you may not even be able to do maintenance on your house if you don't get along with your neighbor. There's actually an example of that at Cook City. When you enter Cook City on your left, there's a two-story building with high-deck exposed. They can't work on it because the neighbors are not getting along, and the house with the high-deck is right on the property line, the business that lives there. But anyway, so it is a serious issue. The developer has really three options. One is to create easements. The second is to request a zoning amendment. And the third is to wait for us to get the zoning and update it to our zoning. Right now, we're working on a growth policy. As Dave can attest, it's taking a while. But, so we probably won't get the zoning until probably winter or hopefully in the fall. And at that point, we can take that out of our zoning. I believe it's in the HOA too, but as part of zoning, it's something we have to require. We can at least get it out of our zoning, so it's not something we have to require.
Are we late enough in the year that it's not gonna impact building this year?
Well, it could have, but the timing is such that it's so difficult because this ordinance, it needs 2 readings. We've got to advertise it in the paper. It doesn't take effect for 30 days. So really, it's something that has to occur pretty early in the year to get it ready.
Wasn't this zero setback, wasn't this something that we spent a lot of time on in like 2015,
No, not 2015.
2016?
You might be thinking of commercial businesses. There were some changes to commercial businesses a few years ago, and their requirements for setbacks.
There was something that, when Mayor Williams was here, he said he was gonna veto, and then he never did. He didn't veto it, and then he was gone by the next meeting. And so it went through, and I thought that was the zero setback.
Wasn't there
there something about accessory buildings / garages that you can now build right up to the,
That's true. You can put a accessory
that
building
just changed?
to the alley, zero lot line, and that was kind of, that's probably what it was, is that was discussed a fair amount with some people. I felt there should be at least 2 foot setback there, because when you'll go down the alleys and some of these garages at 0 feet, and then you'll have trash cans and other things approaching past the property.
Be prepared. It will be controversial.
Yeah, and then,
You think it would be controversial to eliminate the zero setback?
Absolutely. Look around, walk down the alley.
I have a house that has a zero setback.
well,
But this is all mining town versus new development.
Yeah, let's get back on the Spire.
so just
Oh, is it?
just to kind of clarify for you, right now it's 12 foot setback on one side of the property and then 0 on the other, and then they could default to city standards, current city standards, which are 6 feet from the sides. So the footprints would be able to be the same, but it's centering them on the lot rather than on one side.
Would it be specific to a zoning area at the Spire? So I now dialed into, is it something that's there without creating problems down here?
Correct. So, well, if we take it out of our zoning, the underlying zoning up there is R3. So if we take that last section out of our zoning regulations, which has to do with Spire 2D, then if I default, it goes to our zoning, which is the 6 foot size. Now, they can still have an HOA, like the state has an HOA, and they have some different requirements for their setbacks than what we have, but that's completely on that HOA. And whatever's stricter is what applies. So in this case, generally an HOA is almost always stricter than the city zoning.
And our zoning map is covered, but this isn't R3 down here.
I think we are actually right here, are we? At the, quite sure the Spire is right. It is, yes. That light tan is R3.
Most of downtown is not, so it wouldn't be creating problems for people who want to put auxiliary structures. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, it would not change zoning for anybody down here. In addition to the setback issues, which we should be able to get addressed this winter, there's a few other issues. The developer would like to put a house on the undeveloped 87 acres of land. Staff, myself, Jim, Becky have spent some time on this, and we have some concerns about how that could occur. Our concerns are centered around the fact that the developers purchased the subdivision, and we're concerned about when future development will occur, how current development could impact the future development. In other words, what's the footprint of the structures that they're proposing on 87 acres? Still a little unclear on that. There were things in the annexation agreement that haven't been fulfilled yet. Some of it has to do with Jim, with the, I don't know, most of you are aware, Jim's had some issues with the development in the past about the lift station and being able to access it. The annexation agreement gives us the ability to require easements when public works deems necessary, 30-foot easement. So we are requesting that. The developer has indicated that they'd be okay with allowing an unobstructed easement to that.
Because right now the trail is already written in, but access to the lift station is not, is my memory serves me correctly.
Correct. And in terms of the lift station, there is no recorded easement. I went to the assessor's office a couple of years ago, seeing if there was any type of easement associated with that current road. There was nothing.
Okay, time out. On the back row, it's not gonna make sense, but trust me, these lights run on windows. Will you flip both switches down and count to 2 and then turn it back on? Rebooting it fixes the problem. I don't know how the lights run on windows, but they do. I'm sorry, James.
Um,
I was gonna have an epileptic seizure there from the, from the lights going off.
Lost my train of thought a little bit there. There was no recorded easement on that existing road that Public Works uses to get to the lift station. Now, we could have potentially tried to argue that there was a prescriptive easement, we did not do that. But the developer has indicated they'd be willing to do that. I had concerns the developer had mentioned that they were going to fence off the 87 acres. They do plan to have horses up there. There's an existing Moran trail that the original developer put in as part of the annexation agreement. It's a pretty underutilized trail in large part because long term aspires is to have trails that connect to other trails. Right now it's more or less a dead end trail. So that is something I think at this point in time we could push for, is to ask for that connection, because the annexation agreement basically calls for certain things to be accomplished within the development. And some people, a house in the 87 acres may or may not be considered a development by some people. But we feel that asking for such a item is important. The subdivision was approved in large part based off of things like the trail system and the parks that were going to be put in. Obviously, it's no fault of the original developers or anybody else. The market fell apart. 12 years later, though, we still have a lot of items that haven't been completed. And then one other issue is the water rights. And looking through the annexation agreement, this was obviously well before my time, but the city was supposed to get water rights through that development. And I had asked Jim about it. He didn't know whether or not we'd gotten those, or he didn't know much about it either. I went on the Department of Natural Resources website. We have not received any. Now there was language in there that it may not be possible to get those water rights, but I would like to see an attempt made to at least try to that. And in the meantime, as I was discovering that, I also discovered we were supposed to receive water rights for Remington Ranch, which we never did. And that's actually a bigger issue for people up there, I believe, because if water rights are lost on the ditch, people's wells may not recharge the same way, and then they could eventually have significant problems up there in terms of the groundwater if those ditches are going to go away. But that's about all I had to add to it. I don't know if Jim, do you have anything to say?
No, like I said, I'm just interested in dealing that, like I said, see if their emails, and I agree that it probably isn't going to grow over the next 10 or 12 years up here that much, but part of the deal of developing that, in order for the city to afford to maintain the water and sewer and that, there has to be a certain amount of building going on up there. Whereas right now, the cost of running that lift station and the amount of time to maintain the water quality up there and stuff, it's costing the city, whereas when the development gets up to 50% full, the 200 units or whatever, then it's going to start paying for its own cost of doing it. Like we have to actually go up there and spill water to keep the chlorine level up where it's supposed to be. So we have to go up there a couple times a year and dump water down into the deal until we get the chlorine. And there's not enough use up there to make that happen naturally. And so that's a part of not continuing the development of it. If we don't get enough homes and usage up there, the cost of us maintaining that system is going to be a detriment to the city's water and sewer budget.
So is what you want to do making it easier for people to build up there and not adding to the expense?
Well, the developer needs to be, moving forward on developing the properties up there, getting homes. Although there's homes going up there now, I mean, we've had 2 of them up there since the very beginning, which is really not. We have to physically go run the station to keep it from septic. I mean, we need the development to actually develop and get homes up there, to make it feasible for the city to move forward to annex that in. To keep that annexation as a, you know, when they get it, the site was over, we're gonna grow and we're gonna get all these, and so the new lift station was developed to accommodate that many lots. All the things that were done for future, all turned around that subdivision being part of, annexed into the city. So it's real important that we look forward that it may not happen in the next 10 or 12 years, but we need to know that that's gonna grow to make that feasible for what we've invested already to make it possible.
So will this make it easier for it to grow, to change those zoning setbacks?
Yeah,
That'll
we
make it
know that
easier
people-
and
we
it
know
won't
that-
add cost?
We do know that people have not built up there because on a couple of those lots, because of the lot line issue. And to kind of speak a little more to what Jim was saying about the fact that we need development up there. The annexation agreement that we have, from 2007, annexation agreements are done quite a lot differently. The annexation agreement we have was well written, but one thing in recent years that they have that they did not often have back then is benchmarks for when future phases will occur. And that is something we don't have. And so one thing we're all a little concerned about is that a house goes up in the back 87, it sits there forever, and there, no further development occurs. And the promises that were made to us in terms of future development in order to pay for the infrastructure do not happen, and then the subdivision becomes a long-term money loser for us. Eventually, we have to approve new subdivisions beyond that, and then we have to buy new lift stations. We've got aging water lines, and we don't want to encourage sprawl and adding water and sewer lines where we don't need to. We need to try and focus our growth where we have those lines. Cheaper for our taxpayers, it's better for everybody involved. But the annexation agreement, it essentially calls on both parties, the city and Spires, upon execution of the agreement to complete the things necessary to carry out the terms, conditions, and provisions of this agreement. So it's kind of general language, but there is a general understanding that development will continue to occur. About all I have to say
How
on
many
that.
lots are on that 87 acres?
It's just one lot.
So we've never expected to have more than one.
Well,
House
it's,
on that.
no, that's incorrect. There's actually a lot of plans that were drawn up that show the future build out of that 87 acres. But as that was just done in a preliminary manner, only phases 1A and 1B, which is what is currently plotted out there, went to final plat. And then as build up of 1A and 1B progresses, then phases 2A, I believe it's 2, 3, maybe 2A, 2, et cetera, are to move forward.
Yes, sir.
My name's Mark Allen, and we're.
Go to the podium.
Oh, okay. My name is Mark Allen, and this is my wife Valerie, and we're the people that bought the development up there. And our intentions are to continue to build homes, and we're moving up here. This is where we're going to be, and phase 1A and 1B, which consisted of 32 lots that we purchased as well as the other lots in the subdivision. We've been talking to James about the 0 lot lines, and that's for us, and talking to people that are interested in the lots, that's a big thing because they're not interested in building on the lot line, and it's not all the lots, but the majority of the lots up there, that's how they're governed. And we were really hoping that we could try and get this changed this year so that we still wanted to get several more foundations into the ground. And it sounds like it may be maybe next year at this point. And that's where we were asking James if there's any way that through this, that we could have some type of agreement prior to, so that we can at least get these started and be ready to sell next spring, early summer. The building season's short, and, we're wanting to get some foundations in.
Let me ask a clarification question, James. So I think what I heard with the zero lot lines is it doesn't require people to build on the zero. It's just that there's no guarantee that your neighbor won't. And so my concern is I may build centered in the lot, but there's no guarantee that my neighbor won't. If that's correct, and he's pouring all of the foundations, there's nothing that precludes him from moving, there's nothing that has to be changed for him to pour foundations. We just need to change zoning so that that's protected for future development. Is that a true statement?
Well, that is true. I mean, I think that's a big leap to just, to pour a foundation with the expectation that it'll happen. I'm very confident it will happen.
No, I'm not asking my question clearly. Is there something that, because if I'm pouring it, I wouldn't pour it until I knew it was okay, but it doesn't require them to do it, zero.
Correct. The language is a little vague on that zero, but the problem is one side is 12 feet, and it's a 12 feet setback, so you're really not going to have room.
Have room
I don't
for
think
12
to
foot
really
So you
do
gotta
much.
push it.
So there is a limitation of a 12-foot setback that is currently in place.
Right.
So to his point, you mentioned the ordinance takes 2 readings, so that would kill this year's building session. You mentioned 2 other mechanisms when you were talking about it. Is there either one of those that gives them the ability to build sooner?
Easements, yeah, I mean, but I don't think.
Yeah, I think the easements they're tough, and I think when people review that, to give somebody an easement over in your yard to take care of their maintenance on their house is, I don't think people are interested. They wanna be able to walk on the side of their house and wash their windows or whatever.
So our problem isn't the 0, our problem is the 12. That's the restricting factor right now. Thank you. I was just looking for a way to make it work.
Yeah, so that kind of takes care of 1A, 1B, our projections to the bank are, we do have a loan, and we have to make sure that loan gets paid back, and, so we're projecting this out, what we provided to the, not get started until we're, almost completely finished with, phase 1A and 1B. What we felt is that we want to carve out in the back for our house and to have our animals. The rest of the 87 acres, we can develop that and lay that. What, at that time, what is required. And we wouldn't develop the whole thing anyway all at once because of the expense. So then move on down the line, or possibly have 2 different areas or 2 different size lots that would be available for people. But when you look at the number of water and sewers that were committed to this subdivision, which was roughly 400, that's a lot, and I don't think we could ever develop it in rest of my life. So, and we're here to, like I say, we're moving up here. We want to, be right there in the development so we can follow what's going on and watch our investment. And this is something that as we platted the 87 acres and started to develop it, our pasture and stuff would get smaller and smaller over a period of time. So to make room for that development. So that's kind of what we foresee as far as, according to the annexation agreement, we would be not as aggressive as they. A different layout than what was originally laid out.
James, what would we need to do to make sure that schedule for the zoning gets addressed well in advance of next year's building season? Can we?
Help us move through the growth policy.
Can we insert it before completing the growth policy? Is there anything that says we have to wait until the growth policy is done?
If we, well, there is nothing that says we don't have to, but I really do not want to do that. I think if.
But I know at least
if
one
we
other
get
person in this
to-
room would really like to make sure that we're good to go plenty of time next year.
Well, I think if January, if we hit January and it's clear we're not gonna get our zoning done, by, in the next couple of months, I think that's a point where we could look at getting that changed on our end. The developer does have the opportunity to request that we open up our zoning, that there's a fee for that, I think it's $1,000, so we don't open up the zoning just because somebody wants to. So by December, January, we would need to make sure we're either almost.
Because of the two readings. Let me rephrase it. I don't think we can hit 2 years building schedule without you writing. We'll start that process later than January, which ensures that you have an answer before the building season next year. Did I capture that correctly, James? How does that work for you?
Well, it's not ideal, I mean, because I have projections that I have given to the bank. There are some options that we can build on some of the lots that don't have those restrictions, but we're trying to kind of phase it so that all the houses aren't stacked up right next to each other. So trying to space it out from back to front. So
We want you to be able to build.
yeah, no, I know you do, and I think it benefits all of us. So.
Well, no, because whichever one is more restrictive is still in effect, so the zoning would still take impact.
The HOA isn't more restrictive?
Mm-hmm.
It would be in that case. If we had, R3 as the underlying zoning up there, and that became the de facto zoning, and the PDS lot lines went away, I do believe the HOA still has those language in it. So the HOA, I do believe needs to be changed as well.
But changing the HOA doesn't eliminate the zoning that's still in effect without a zoning change.
Correct.
So that would still be a restricting factor.
Correct, so for example, the Country Club Estates, they have an HOA, they have certain requirements for setbacks, fencing, et cetera, that's completely not through your HOA, it's not in your HOA. So when somebody calls me and wants to build out there, I tell them our requirements, and then I give them the number to the HOA president up there to run it by them to make sure it's okay. But Spires was different in that those setbacks were actually adopted into our zone. So there's two things that have to be changed, not just zoning.
But even the $1,000 start the process doesn't eliminate that it's still gonna be a fairly lengthy process that eliminates this year's building season, if I'm understanding properly.
Yeah, obviously, it's changed in ordinance, takes a while, we have to put it in the newspaper, the readings 30 days after it passes, so it's a few months.
I'm Valerie Allen. I had a meeting with James about a week ago, 10 days, and in that meeting, he stated it could be the end of building season next year before this was addressed. The end of building season next year.
And I think I'm hearing we could have it done before the beginning of building season next year.
Yeah, I was speaking towards the way we're, kind of going slow through the growth policy and zoning, that I was concerned about that, the pace we're going with the zoning, or growth policy, and zoning could potentially take a lot longer.
Which takes us back to the, do we insert it in? I think what I'm hearing that I would like to ask is there a way we can do this before the beginning of building season next year? What do we have to rearrange to make that a possibility? Because one of our jobs is to help encourage development. So we're about to have a lovely conversation on budget, and more money would be good.
And we're bringing infrastructure, if the infrastructure's there, we're developers, so that's what we do. And it's like your throat's been cut, and it's ridiculous, frankly, that it's taking, leaps and bounds to even get this far. To build where there's already sewer, water, telephone, streets, sidewalks. It is ridiculous.
I think with the original setup, and I wasn't part of that, but there's a lot of things that you read, and I think you look at James's file of the spires, it's like this deep, and it's not that complicated, and I think with the HOA, I don't think there would be a problem, getting it changed there as well, so. But as far as, like I said, we did send, James and Jim, a letter, as far as what we were looking to do on the 87 acres. And so now we're kind of in a limbo. We sold our house, we gotta get out, and we would like to get started on something, and it's I know it's maybe not a high priority for the city, but I think we're trying to commit to what we're trying to do, and that this is a big part of it. So.
I'd just like to add a little bit. I'm Marcella Manuel, Coldwell Banker. I had the Spire subdivision listed for 5 years before we finally found the Allens to come and buy that subdivision and bring it to a point where we can get some construction going up there. And I'm really excited about, them having a house under construction there now finally. And that subdivision has sat there since 2009 with 2 houses. And it's got all the city infrastructure, everything there ready to go. So I'm very excited about them being here, but I'm really frustrated with the hurdles that are being thrown up in front of them to getting things going up there. Whether it's the 0 lot line setbacks or what they want to do to build their own home, that 87 acres in the back is 1 lot in that subdivision. It is the remainder tract. And when they've talked to James about doing anything on that back lot, he says, we want to know what all their plans are for future development there before we approve their building for their own home. Because as James and Jim have said, they want to make sure that there's 300 hookups in the back of the subdivision. But if you look at other subdivisions around town, look how long it's taken the golf course. The golf course has been there since 1980, and we are still only about 75% built out at the golf course. Remington Ranch, look at Diamond C. I mean, I don't even remember when Diamond C was platted, maybe in 98. And there are basically 5 or 6 houses back there. So to ask them today to commit that they're gonna do 300 hookups and build, to tell the city what might be possible in 15 or 20 years, I think it's really unreasonable. I think you should let them build their house in the back so that they can get on with the rest of the subdivision. Build on the 32 lots that they bought, and let's give them an opportunity to bring some affordable housing, some jobs, and some more housing to town. So I'm just asking on their behalf, please think about what's practical here. Asking them to commit to 300 hookups and whatever was proposed in 2007, I think is really unreasonable.
James, what is the limitation on the house on the big lot? I'm gonna say big house, that's an assumptive statement on my part, but I'm guessing it's not a cottage.
Well, the part of the issues are, the kind of what brought up with the water rights, the easement, the trail system, and those are commitments that were made 12 years ago that have not been fulfilled yet. We'd like to see those things taken care of. The other issue is, I still don't know exactly where the building is. The building, there's 3 buildings being proposed with development of where they're gonna be placed.
They were on that site plan that I sent.
I just saw a piece of paper with like a circle on the corner. I don't know.
Did you get that this morning?
Yeah. Maybe there's something more.
There were
But,
7 pages attached to it.
oh, okay,
You didn't get all the attachments.
okay. So there's more information, but we had concerns and I had asked for setbacks, spacing issues with those buildings because if they're extremely far apart, we're gonna have basically a 2-3 acre potentially property in the middle of a very dense subdivision, at least fairly dense subdivision, which would be, in my opinion, hindering the goals of the development, which was to have a urban scale neighborhood. So I want to ensure that that development doesn't impede the long-term goals of the subdivision.
I think he already said though, his goal is to keep the back as a larger tract and develop in stages as he marches back to the back of the subdivision. So there's maybe a misunderstanding about.
Are you looking at making them bigger lots I mean, so if you cut it down from 400 to 300, are the lots just gonna be bigger lots, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think I broke it down in there that to go from like 400 down to 274 or something like that. So that's 125 roughly lots or hookups that you could use somewhere else for your, based on your capacity of your system. And by doing that, yes, the lots would be progressively bigger towards the back. So you have the smaller ones up in the front, and then as you work your way back, they would get larger back there.
I would guess that this council has absolutely zero appetite to circumvent the procedure that's required by law to change zoning. So that's why I kind of look at going this year, and I think what I heard is it doesn't preclude you from starting to pour foundations, but that's a gutsier move than I would make. I don't anticipate, or I don't see why we couldn't, and if it helps, we could maybe pass a resolution to direct, but I don't even think that's necessary, because what I think I heard James say is we can put together a timeline that allows, and that doesn't guarantee the outcome of the zoning, but I think what I heard James say is we can put together a timeline that should allow us to safely get through this process a couple months before next year's building season starts. Is that a fair path forward, and does it require action from the council to help make that happen, or do we just say, hey, if that makes all the sense in the world, let's do it?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we should do everything possible to help these folks move forward.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I just
Thank
think
you.
that that's part of what our responsibility is. Marcella made some good points there. And what can we do, Jim, or James, not just Jim, James, what can we do to help that process?
Nothing really. I mean, I think the main thing is just to get you up to speed on some of the trail issues. I was concerned about possibility of trails being cut off. That's part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because I let the RTA know, that the ACP group know, planning board know, park board know, that you guys should know.
And I have heard, this is for you guys as well, I have heard comments and complaints about, and I haven't gone out to look and validate exactly which and where, but about no trespassing signs. And it sounds to me like if we have no trespassing signs on the trails part, that's probably not appropriate.
That is on the private road that accesses the lift station. People have been assuming that that was part of the trails, and
And it's not.
it is not.
Yeah, they were using it
I know several people firsthand, and I've gone out there and walked before, so I'm familiar with the area. It was a lovely walk.
And we want that as a public, easement.
But
Beyond,
so,
beyond public works, you're asking for a public easement there?
Yes.
so, but like I said, we can't make a 3-month process or a 5-month process take a week.
Right.
But
Yeah.
are you comfortable with the commitment moving forward that we'll make sure that it's done?
Yeah,
a month or two
absolutely.
prior
I mean,
to the
that's
building
what
season
we-
next year?
I understand how your process has to go. Knowing that, if you say that's what you can provide us, we can make arrangements for the next couple foundations and plan for the spring for,
A lot of concrete.
pardon?
A lot of concrete.
A lot of concrete, yeah.
James, if there's anything we can do, tell us, because I think we need to help move this forward, if at all possible. And I know that puts the burden on you, but you tell us if you need us to do anything.
I just wanted to get the council up to speed on what was going on.
Can I just say one more thing? So in terms of the annexation agreement, it does have a lot of things that are required, but it says specifically in there that as future phases are developed. It's not something that had to be done when the whole subdivision was done. It doesn't make sense to, commit to putting in trails if you haven't developed that part of the subdivision. And I think that's one of the hurdles that we've come up against is James says, well, the annexation agreement says we have to do this, and that's not been completed yet. Well, a lot of those things come in later phases. They're not things that can happen. You can't put the cart before the horse. Or, you can't put the cart before the horse. But anyhow, as the subdivision develops, those things will naturally come into place. But you can't make them, force trails and force other things to happen until the subdivision is further developed.
There are trails there, and there is a park and a picnic table, and we take care of the mowing. We haven't gotten it all done yet this year because of all the rain, but those trails are established. We did have it surveyed, and where the bank put their gate was on the tree line, so that kids couldn't drive around. If they put the gate back on the pin where it needed to be, kids could just drive around. There were no trees to stop them. So the bank put the gate on the tree line in the back. That's where the signs are. The gate has to be moved forward. And we're willing to possibly give the easement to the Public Works Department for the substation because they have to take care of that. That's part of the city. So beyond that, that is not park property. That is not the park property. The park property is in the front, and I would be happy to meet anybody out there and show them what they need to see.
Is there a possibility that I hear that some of those extended developments aren't reasonable to expect to be done up front? Those are things that get done as things move on. Is there a potential compromise there where even though it may not be developed, it starts to be identified where it is, and that could be opened up so that people could walk out there, even though it's not developed, it's still accessible, because clearly people have been using it, the road, even in lack of development.
That's a possibility, but, if we have mules and they chase your dog, I'm not gonna be responsible for what happens to
And you
your
don't
dog.
want people's dog to chase your mules either.
No. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s. They've had the access to it, and, one of my comments is why didn't a bunch of people that live in Red Lodge get together and buy the piece of property if they wanted to keep it for the city and not develop it? You have 400 miles of trails around Red Lodge. That's not the only trail.
To be clear, the developer is responsible for putting the trail not moved around us. It's not the city's responsibility to do that.
I think we've got a plan forward and other agenda items.
And this was just informational, so we could hear from the Allens and what James says. And, yes.
I have a quick question. I am an aspired lot owner, and
our property backs up next to the park, and part of the reason we bought up there was because of the park. But from my understanding, the 87 acres is separate from the park, and then the park will stay.
Well, the park is right behind you, that stays.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Yeah.
But the park isn't as big as it appears.
Right.
But they've been mowing an area that's about a third bigger than what the park technically is.
Which includes the south half of the trail. Is outside of Vision Park.
Yeah, I don't think the existing trails, I mean, we're not trying to keep people off of those at all, but I think any future trails will have to, because there is additional parkland that we have to dedicate as part of that. We don't know where that's gonna be at this point. And I think over a period of time, 8 years or whatever, we're gonna spend time, we're gonna see, what really, and talking with you guys, what really makes sense. Where does that trail need to go? Where does it need to connect? So.
And I'd like to add a thank you for, I know we put you on the spot, but I'd like to thank you for, and I see a couple of us that are on the planning board that are part of that commitment process as well, but thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the budget discussion. I don't know that everybody at the table knows how we got to this final document and how that all came about, but Lonnie started working probably about March. February. And of course, that, then we had water problems, but she worked on it. She gave the department heads their sheets to work off of, and we're talking about general budget right now. And that process began, and they began working on those. So on April 18th, I sent out an email to council stating when we were going to meet with the department heads. And Diana attended 2 of them, Dorian attended all of them. And so what we did at that time is received their initial budget. So over the past months now, what we have done is tweak everything to make sure that we meet our goal, which is last year's numbers. I think Diane has received all my worksheets that I've done through the months, and this is where we're at. We have a balanced budget, and that's where I'm at on it.
A lot of work goes into this. Thank you.
Well, Dave, you were saying something about starting up here and working down here, or having 3 different budgets last night. I don't know.
No.
I didn't really catch all that, but essentially what we did is we started out, this is what the department had wanted, and then we pared it down from there.
I can speak, and hopefully I can communicate or articulate better than I did last night. If I look at the budget list, and this is really, really good, this is, I'm gonna use a food analogy again, because it makes sense to me. No, it's all right.
We're so
This is, I know, this is stocking the kitchen. And in reality, it's managing, and the conversation last night kind of turned to even micromanaging. And that's not my desire nor my interest. My interest is, and it's based on the people who've approached me with concerns, is what I would like to do is I would like to bring to the next meeting a resolution, and I want to get a kind of straw poll here that just basically says the mayor shall cause each department head, so not any one, but each department head to provide a list of services to be provided to the citizens for the allocated amount. And I compare this to, like I said, if I go into any restaurant in town, I can go in and I know what I'm getting for my money, and it gives us the ability to defend that. And just so, And if I try to distill what I've heard people say, it's like, what do I get? What do I get? What do I get? Do I think there's an exercise that says, what could I get for, what would the list look like if I had 90% of the budget? Sure. Do I think there's an equally important conversation? What do I get if I had 10% of the budget? Sure. So in my dream world, I'd probably like to see I'd like to see those. Chief Wells gave some, I don't recall how much of it was in the meeting. I think most of it was in the meeting last night. He gave a really good example of a practice that we have that may be costing us money in the long run. He gave the example that when we bring in officers, and particularly not used officers was the term that came up, that they're not really beneficial to us for 6 months. We don't get to run them on solo routine. So, and I have to be careful because I don't want to manage or micromanage, but there's part of me that says, if we can avoid that expense by paying our officers $2 or $3 an hour more, that seems to me a whole lot cheaper than paying somebody to do nothing for 6 months. And what I don't want to be is penny wise and pound foolish. But like I said, when people come to me and say, hey, what's the budget look like, or what is this, the overwhelming thing I hear is, what do I get for that? And from the private sector, when we would turn in our budgets and everybody would justify their budgets, it would just be, here's a list of the services you get. And I hesitate to do that, but I'll use Chief Wells because it's the largest probably one out of the general fund that says, we have 7x24 coverage, we have this, we have, to me, each department should be able to do that. So I guess my question is, if I were to request that we just want people to provide us a list of what this means, this is the stocking the kitchen list, but I don't want to manage the restaurant. I just want to know what my choices are. What do I get for my money? Just a summary of, am I alone and smoking the wacky weed, or is that something other council members would be interested in?
And I would say if you want such a menu, that the designated council members for each department head help that process.
Okay. And that's,
I mean, each, public works, police, I mean, if we're gonna take the time to say, these are the services we're providing, let's get the department head and the council person in on that, so that the council person can actually explain what's going on there.
I have zero objection to helping with that process. Like I said, I'm just saying, as a council person, that's what I hear, and it has been narrowed down to it's all about services. What do I get for my money? And I have no response other than that's a perfectly reasonable request from my standpoint.
Get the resolution.
I will do so. That's one guy. Is there other council members who I don't want to spend the time?
Is that where
everybody
everybody's
thinks it's
at
a dumb
on that?
idea?
I like your idea, we need to go.
If you'll show up. You haven't come by lately.
It would definitely be nice to have the information to answer questions from the citizens of this city when we're approached. When they say, what's going on here? Why are we spending this here? And I say, well, I don't know why line item A went up and line item B went down. I can't answer that for you. So
Yeah,
it would be nice to speak intelligently about and be able to sort of defend this budget, but we're not able to do that currently.
And again, we don't want to manage, we don't
Not
want
at
to
all.
say this should go down and this should go up. That really isn't our purview, and I can speak for myself, I have no desire to do that. I do want to be able to say, this is what you get from it, and I think there are some worthwhile, I understand you had to make some hard cuts and you've worked with everybody and that's good. And I haven't seen anything in the current budget that completely scares me and says, oh, no, that's not gonna fly. Well, nothing scares me that bad yet. That doesn't mean I don't think there's discussion points, but I would like to be able to provide a list of what, telling people, hey, this is what you get.
so, city attorney says we do not need a resolution for that, so I'll just leave it up to the individual members where to get with their department heads. And, we move that forward, yes, Diane.
I just want to make a comment. When I met with, the two departments that I met with back
Police
in
and
May, police and the
city
city
attorney.
attorney. You know, there isn't one thing that Chief Wells listed that he needed and wanted that I didn't agree with. And I was very upfront about that and said, I get that, but where is the money tree? Where is the money gonna come from? And that is our biggest issue, is it would be wonderful if we could supply everybody with everything, but we can't. And so cuts have to be made. And one of the things, the only thing I wanna ask about the bottom line of each budget, was that the number that department heads were given to target rate to, or was it just like a full budget target rate?
Net negotiation when it was all done, I think was my understanding.
Right.
And I guess the other one, from the comments last night, you know, do I think the officers need a $1 or $2 an hour raise? Absolutely I do. And I think, my question is, you know, Chief Wells told us last night that he did not spend $40,000 of his budget for this past year, and his budget for this next year is $28,000 more, so it's $68,000, give or take. If the $1 or $2 more an hour per officer is something that's a priority, could he move some stuff around in his budget to provide that?
We're pretty tight. Go ahead.
So there's also contractual issues that we have to understand, that
That's
the
one of the things
contract
we
has
talked about.
issues where we have raises, we have benefits, we have promotions, we have those sorts of things that we are obligated to by contract. The additional thing, because everything else is wages that has been, you know, negotiated as what it is. Those are costs that are there. The only cost that I may have extra is $5,000 for a system that produces our policy, that is available online, which it provides training to our officers as well. According to policy, it's a national policy, which is defended by numerous attorneys trying to keep us from getting sued. That's my goal. Provide a strong policy that we know what it is. The other thing is it benefits our officers so that while they're in a car and they say, oh my goodness, I didn't have this, I've never had this question ever before. I've got a juvenile that I need to arrest him from getting sued and to do it correctly. And I think that the $5,000 to be spent up front is something that is going to save us a lot of money in the past. Now, our officers try to do everything exactly right. There's no one that goes out and tries to get us sued. But the fact of it is that when you're taking people's freedom from them, you're an easy target if you do something wrong to be sued. And when I say be sued, not just me, but the city of Red Lodge. So my goal is to provide a policy that is clear and uneasily understood, something that is easily defended in court, and something that try and make it as bulletproof as possible. So that is I guess that's my one thing that I'm going to get out of this budget. I did have other things in the budget, such as additional wages for the officers. We weren't able to do that. We also had things in there. I wanted to increase my administrative assistance fund. That also didn't. It stayed the same. So those are the things that my Cadillac plan, if I were to cut, would be cut. So if you ask me today what I could cut $5,000 and not go with that policy. I'm just saying.
I'm not asking you to cut anything. I'm just saying that this is your budget,
Right.
and if that was a priority, then maybe it could be found. I understand the $5,000 training thing because you explained the whole thing to me, and honestly, I think that is so.
And
I just want to make it clear that it's not us making cuts.
Yeah, I'd love to also maybe in a next work session, present that program to you, rather than me explain it. I talked to the vendor and they would love.
I don't
need to sell it.
We're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's your budget.
Yeah, it is, it's your budget, so, and I expect that I wasn't present, but I would expect that there were conversations between the mayor, whose job it is, that said, hey, would we maybe be better off, rather than doing with one officer less and using those salary dollars to increase everybody else, so that we can hang on to them and not have people we can't use next year. But I don't want to have that conversation because that gets into that managing or micromanaging. I'm assuming those conversations have happened.
If I could, it's a great question, because that's a good thought, you know, to keep the wages up, use it. What happens is our officers get burned out. Our officers are currently working 12-hour shifts. They get held over for DUIs, things that they have to stay over shift. They're beat at the end of those shifts. And in order to sometimes fill those shifts, as of even right now, I'm paying overtime, which is time and a half, and in their contract, if they get over 94 hours, I have to pay double time. So I have to be very conscious as to how much I work my officers. One, I don't want to burn them out. I mean, you can only work so much, and the job that we have, as stressful as it is, and you have to be on your A game for those 12 hours, that's the max. And so we're at the point right now with really one officer being down, we're now down a sergeant, so I'm down again, and I've got information, so I've got to hire another officer. I got to get that officer trained, and L. Stuber is getting close to retirement. He says, don't know when that day is, but it could be. He could go anytime.
But you've also indicated that part of
Retire. I mean, he can retire anytime. I feel great right now.
But you've indicated that, like I said, part of that problem is because we aren't paying, and again, I don't want to be manager, but you mentioned last night that the highway patrol stops at a certain time of day, the county stops at a certain time of day. I love that we want to be able to provide that 7x24, but we don't want to burn officers out. We also don't want them to leave. You know, it's because I heard you say last night, if we want to stop losing officers, we need to pay so that they don't start here and move to the county, that they don't start here and move to that. And given that we have a finite budget, how do we do it? May be that when we look at the services offered that I can do for this amount of money, maybe that list looks different than what we just take for granted that it looks like.
So I'm saying let's get the list together, you know, work with your department heads. We have a balanced budget now, you know, we tweak it about as far as we can. If we could, we've talked about the town hall meeting, talking about how we're gonna get more funds, what are we gonna do, we're gonna raise the mills, and that meeting has to happen. My thing is to get a balanced budget, which we have. If we get these lists going, and we get that done, and if we can go ahead and ratify this general fund budget, I'm good. Let's hold the town hall meeting and see where we come up with some more monies, or what we're gonna do, or if we're gonna cut services, or whatever. You get whatever comes out of the town hall meeting.
So I guess I've heard this, and I just want clarification, because I don't know. I hear about we need to cut the budget. We need to cut the budget. And I guess I'm having a hard time understanding. I hear that all the time. But we are here today with a balanced budget from my understanding of the current year's mill value, which it should go up if I'm correct. So we are balanced budget.
I'm not saying we need to cut. In fact, I'm saying exactly the opposite. I'm saying, as I listen to you, we need to increase the budget. I just don't know where it comes from. And so when that happens at home, I say, okay, we're going to eat out one less time a month. We're going to, you know, I figure out. I'm not saying we need, like you said, this is a balanced budget. What I'm hearing is that this balanced budget isn't going to solve some problems that we're going to have. This balanced budget is not going to mean that we don't have 2 officers next year that we can't use because they're new and we lost the ones that. That's what I'm saying. It's just, yeah, and we can't give you more money unless we take it away from somebody else.
So, I'm a big picture guy. I can't stand the details. Your budget's your budget, the mayor's budget's his budget. I guess we're trying to say that we know everybody needs more money. We know parks need some, the pool needs some, stormwater needs some. We need to figure out, big picture, what this is all gonna cost, and give it to the voters and say, what do you guys wanna pay for? How do you wanna pay for it? Tax increases are penalize productive people, but we might have to consider a mill increase. I would love to see this new resort tax, we're coming up with some innovative and creative ways to bring more people to town, more events, whatever, to raise our revenue. So, we're not looking to cut your budget, we're looking to give you what you need, but we need to know how to pay for it first, I guess, is maybe what we're trying to articulate intelligently.
Well, and that's not gonna happen with this budget. I mean,
Not this
we're
budget,
looking
no.
forward. We're like, this is
No.
a balanced budget.
I am all on board of
And nobody's
trying
asked you to cut.
assist in any way I can as far as coming with ideas as to what we can do to do it. I appreciate the fact that you are conscious. I live in the city, I pay taxes here, I'm raising my family here. I understand what the budget is, and so I understand that, and I'm willing to help how I can. But my ultimate passion is protect my guys, and protect the people you hired me to protect. That's my ultimate passion, and it is a passion.
That's what we asked you to do.
And I would even take it one step farther and say that is the correct order. I don't have a problem with that at all. That your guys' number one job every night is to go home to their families. I don't want to spend, and like I said, there's part of the conversation that we can sit down and talk about over a sandwich or or something that it be ideas, but I don't want to do, so I'll throw it, a won't work. Extending the cars, making them last 1 year longer, I don't think changes it, because the cars come out of resort tax, as my understanding, we've got that approved, and that's okay because it's equipment, so that doesn't help us with the salary problem. So like I said, but this is, like I said, if we had one less, we can't do that because it burns them out. So what if, for a short time, what if we did have a block of time where we had less people, or we didn't bring in extra people for certain events, we don't bring in so many extra people, or and I know a lot of those are free, so I understand, but as I listen to you, we got a dollar amount, and if we said, hey, that's your dollar amount, make it work, I would love for you to say, you know what, we're not gonna do this, and we're gonna give people more money, because I get that in my industry, and it's expensive to lose people. Like I said, it's penny wise, but pound incredibly foolish to be losing people for someplace else. That's not our job as we can have casual conversations as Dave, a guy on the street, but it's not our job I'm with Micah. This is the stocking the kitchen list. It's cool, it's great, but if I look at this and comment it, there's no way I can do that where it doesn't sound like I'm trying to do your job, and I don't want to do your job. We hired the very best we could find to do that, and I want to get out of it, but I can offer my 2 cents, man, we ought to figure out how we can pay people more. And to me, if we had a little less coverage, but we kept our people, that's maybe not this year, but next year, the year after that, that's actually going to be a bit safer.
Let's get through this budget here, and those could be moved forward.
We're talking about services, what services you're gonna get, let's just take streets. What do you pay for streets on?
And that's
Total
an
budget of
enterprise.
$149,000. What are the services you're gonna get? You're gonna get your streets cut every street, every alley, every stone store, and you're gonna get the streets kept as drivable as possible with what we have. There is no money to build streets, to build sidewalks, to put in curb and gutter. We have a budget that we can maintain the service we've been giving you over the past 5 years that I've been here, which is a minimum amount of service. We're gonna plow your streets, we're gonna keep your streets drivable. Are there gonna be any new streets built? Are there gonna be any new pavement done? No, there's no money in the streets budget. Let me go back in plowing. We have 4 people on the streets, including myself. It takes 5 of us, so we hold one of the guys out of water and sewer who helps do the plowing in the morning. In fact, 2, because we put a plow on one water guy, so he does plowing to plow us in and out of the water and sewer part, plus he does some of the narrow streets that we can't get to.
So please tell me when you do that, the budget comes out of this.
Well, yeah, you'll see that our guys said right in the same, what I'm telling you, what are you gonna get in the street for? What service service, that's a service that you're gonna get. We're gonna maintain the best we can what we have. There's gonna be no street improvements. There's gonna be no extra, I mean, we're gonna be able to maintain your streets and your streets and do the best we can to patch potholes and maintain what we have. There's no money in the street budget for any street improvements of any significant kind. That's services you're gonna get in the streets.
So that's what we want.
That is what we want, and
Okay.
we're not,
That's what I'm saying, we're
don't
wanting
misconstrue
what
that, we're not
services you're gonna
attacking
get, so let's go to the parks. fund.
your job. Can I make a comment about that? Yeah. In 2014, you had $148,000 for streets. What happened? I don't, so that's what I'm trying to understand, why we see this line item go down, this line item go up, and the money just gets moved around without any approval from council or any approval from the taxpayer.
No, and in fairness, council does approve it. So cemetery district existed last year, and when we no longer had to use that money for cemetery, that's now available to be used for other things. So that's one example of some more money that's in the general fund.
That's why you need to work with Jim more, so he can tell you about these numbers.
Let me explain something about that minimum amount that comes out of cemetery. The streets department has subsidized that cemetery
I kind of put that
for the
back on you.
22 years I've been here. Because for years, we've gone up there, we go and dig the grave, we pile the cemetery, and it's never been taken out of cemetery fund because there was no fund. I couldn't say, well, we spent 2 hours doing cemetery, take it out of the cemetery fund, it has never been there.
Well,
This is what you
things
have
are different now.
to come around here, so now with the district, we don't even, the cemetery.
You don't have
know what
any
I'm saying?
expense
So
up
we got
there
that helped a bunch, because now we are
Sure.
subsidizing the cemetery like we were.
Correct.
So our guys have more time to do the things that
So,
we're,
but it didn't go into streets, did it?
no.
And that's who was doing the work.
And like I said, you got the parks, we're down to a minimum of maintenance, basic, simple maintenance, mowing some lawns, spraying some weeds, keeping them as usable as possible. What it really comes down to, when I look at the budget, and what's happened over the years I've been here, it's real simple, things cost more. The police department's growing, costs more, wages go up, equipment costs more, and we have not brought in any more revenue. I think what we need to look at is there have to be ways of bringing more revenue in to do some of the improvements. Water and sewer, with our raising the rates as we have, we've been able to get more done, and we're moving forward in that regard. I think that part, the enterprising funds are moving forward, we're getting things done, you see that. There's still deteriorating factors out there. We still have water projects, we still have major sewer
Absolutely.
projects, but the funding has to come from somewhere, and our revenues, we have done nothing, that's why
But the mill does have cost of inflation built into it by definition. That's why that's the mechanism that is used.
It certainly hasn't kept up with the years, I'll tell you that.
Well,
I
and we
used to have 5 street people, we had 5 street people. When one of them transferred and became the inspector, we lost that position totally. That's how they balanced the budget that years ago, but we just won't replace that person. Well, that puts me in a bind, because most jobs you go out there do, when you send a street crew or it takes 2 men. One big factor is the safety of 2 men being there. One man out doing a job by himself has an accident. So most of it's a 2-man deal. So now I'm now having a 2-man crew doing this, and I've got that one guy, well, that one guy can safely sweep or mow parks or do, so I'd have to schedule that deal around that factor. And the thing I can tell you about the budget is, you as a council need to look at, we need more revenue to make improvements.
The other
The
thing
best
is,
way
we
to
need
do
to, we need to kind of even it out. And what do the people expect for the number of mills that
That's what
they're
I'm saying.
paying? And we also have a whole nother stream of revenue that a lot of towns our size don't have, that no town our size has, except for West Yellowstone, who's smaller than us, is the resort tax. And that's coming up for a review and a vote. And we can say, let's set aside 20% of this and I'm just pulling these numbers out, don't nail me to them. 20% of this for police, to enhance that general fund. 15% of this to water and sewer, 10% or 15% to sewer, 10% to water. That's what they're getting now out of the resort tax. Streets, let's put 20% or 10% into streets. That'd be an extra $100,000 in what the general fund is already doing. But we have to bring the departments in line to the basic services, and then we can use that resort tax, which grows every year, which doesn't come out of the pocket of the homeowner and the resident, unless they're out drinking and smoking and eating in a restaurant. I mean, and that's fine, but let's use that money. Let's use that for the general fund. Let's enhance our parks.
$700,000 a year in payments for loans for improvements that we've done 20 years ago.
Well, how come I hear differently every single time we talk about the resort tax? Then all of a sudden they say, oh no, we're not paying that. We're putting that towards this, and we're putting that towards this. And then you say, oh no, $700,000 of it goes towards.
I'm telling you numbers. The city, out of the whole city budget, $690,000 a year goes to pay payments for gas, water, and sewer.
Yes, we know that.
So where do you think that came from? Did it come out of the general budget?
No, it comes out of water and sewer.
Sewer, Jim.
Not all of it. You look at your water sewer bill.
So speaking of resort tax, I'm still waiting for, 2 people for that committee, to renew that. And if we don't do something tonight, we're another 2 weeks away.
Well, we can't do anything tonight because, we have to do it 2 weeks because we can't take action tonight.
I know, and
Well-
Dave and I kind of talked about it.
So, but the question is,
But the names-
we've got names now,
Yeah.
we've got one more name that was turned in on time and validated. It would be helpful in the 2 minutes we have left according to ordinance, how do we feel we wanna come prepared to the next meeting to select the council's people?
I would really like the council's people to come from within the city limits. Because this is my
What are they,
reasoning.
James?
One has to be in the city, and then one can be in the city or within 5 miles.
Who are the people in the city? Jody, Jeremy,
Betsy Scan,
oh, Betsy.
And there's one more.
Betsy, Jeremy, Jody, Jade's out of the city, Gordy's out, Betsy's out, Heather's out.
And no disrespect to Councilman Cameron, but that's one person's input and suggestion.
That's right. And let me give you my reasoning. Because it's the people in the city that vote. And the people in the city that need to see a benefit of the resort tax. And it's not the people in the county, regardless. I love all the people that put in their letters. I think they're all very wonderful people. But it's the people of the city that vote. And it's the people of the city that decide whether or not it's a benefit to them.
And part of the reason why it was my idea to have the potential for 2 county people was we had heard a lot, especially from business owners that, hey, we have business in town. We're so involved within town, but we don't live in town, so we can't vote. So I was hoping we could have at least a business owner who could be that kind of person. And Mayor, obviously, he's got Tom Kuntz as a business owner. Tim lives in town.
Yeah.
So there are 2 business owners, one who lives out of town that have been picked.
And there's never been a problem with the collection. That's been a widespread problem with the collection of the resort tax. The only thing I think that the people that live here and that vote on it are concerned is about how is it gonna benefit me? How's it gonna be spent?
My 2 cents is I'd like to see as diverse a group as we can, because I think you get better ideas if you have diverse rather than just fractions. And that doesn't mean that's in conflict with your idea at all.
Okay, so 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock, okay.
Yeah, so we're gonna figure out where you wanna go with that.
Don't talk to more than 2 people at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
As you come up with an idea.
I think we'd all like to get this going.
Oh,
You know,
yes,
because
yes.
we need to have We need to have it pretty well dialed in by January or February to get it on the ballot.
I think it needs to be up for a vote, our next regular meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry we didn't get any public comments. Was there anything that? No? Okay, thank you. Good job.